Okay,
Us.
us everyone. Trust everyone's well. Happy New Year. Welcome to the Japan Chronicles 2024. And I've got Shihan Sean in Nagoya, Japan. Shihan, Happy New Year. How you going?
Us. Happy New Year, mate. Yeah, good. I'm all good. It's a warm 10 degrees today, so I'm
I
not
was about to
complaining.
say, give us the weather. So 10 degrees.
Weathers, yeah, let's always start with the
I'll
weather.
give you mine. I'll give you mine. 26 here in the Surf Coast here in Victoria. So I was out in the
Nice.
water this morning. Absolute delight.
Yeah, no, I'm trying not to look at your Facebook posts when they're going for a little dip or something, and I'm like,
Oh, mate.
you prick,
Yeah.
the thing is, I'd say the best season here is like either spring or autumn.
Yeah.
But once you get into June, July, and it's,
Yeah.
1,000,000% humidity and what have you. You don't get used to it, you just tolerate it. But I don't know, something about me, I certainly prefer the warmer weather to this colder weather. Maybe it's old age. Don't know.
I'm kind of both. Again, more on an athletic. Like I'm not an athlete in by any means, but on an athletic, like working out, training, and making my body, strong and all the things, the attributes that Kyokushin bring. I love it when it gets cold because I go to the students, you want this, your body
Oh,
wants
so,
this.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
When
yeah.
it gets colder temperature and everyone's like, Jesus, fuck, it's cold. And you're like,
Where you
let's
can
get going.
close all the windows and
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
when it's hot and warm, I say the same thing, and they're like, "You love it when it's cold, and you love it when it's hot." And it's like, well, I think you know, again, like we were just summarizing what we're going to talk about today before we jumped on, and in segue of how I treat January,
Mm,
here in Melbourne, here in Australia, it's summertime for us, so the
right.
conditions are warm, and previously in my world and in the basketball terminology, you would have preseason football,
Us.
you would have preseason, and preseason means get your shit together, behind closed doors, while you have that summer break for 4 to 6 weeks. Do your physical training, push ups, sit ups, squats, running, bike riding, surf, whatever it needs to be, so that when we get into the dojo mid January, late January, we have a full year in front of us.
Mm,
Full year in front of us. And it's no, oh, we'll see how we go. It's on.
us.
You all see the social media posts where everyone's like, we're back in the dojo. My concept has been what Shian Billy used to say to us: always be 90% ready. As a
Mm,
Kyokushin karateka, always
mm,
be 90% ready. He'd say, I could tap you on the shoulder tomorrow and we're off to Japan. I could tap you on the shoulder tomorrow and we got to go to interstate and there's a tournament on. And he instilled that in us every
mm,
single
mm,
time,
mm, mm,
which kept
mm.
us away from the booze over that period as well
Us.
and kept
Us.
us sharp. And, being in the water for me is integral to my sanity, everything. I know that me knowing that it's 5 to 10 minutes away from my house, I can drive there at any time.
Mm,
I need to know that, and that's been a blessing that I've got, a fortune that I've got. But the preseason stuff, Shian, that I want to grasp as well as how the philosophy maybe works in Japan is
us.
we got to have our bodies physically, mentally, everything ready before we hit the ground running, because let's see the social media posts that, again, and it's fantastic. I love seeing everyone, the energy and the vibe of everyone going, we're back here in
Mm,
Australia, we're back now that the kids and teens are back to school. The momentum and the energy is good, the weather's good, so everyone
mm,
feels good. And then I'm like, let's not take a month, let's not take 4 to 6 weeks, let's not take late January to March to get our fitness up, and
mm,
we get going now. So then, again, I'm a bit blunt and a bit direct with it, but I go, if you're behind on your fitness, stamina, and the training, and you didn't give a shit over that summer Christmas period, well, I kind of like that you're behind,
mm, mm,
because
mm, mm.
we want to kick we those that want to maintain that strongest karate philosophy and way of life, train daily, train
Yeah.
daily. And again, I think in talking like this, again, it makes me realize more and more, yeah, that's what. And I think of the boss. What would Oyama be saying?
Yeah.
What would
Yeah.
Sosai
Yeah.
have said
Yeah.
if and a head coach of a rugby team or the head coach of
Yeah.
a footy team, and you come back to the training formalities, or the season is about to begin, and you look like
Yeah.
shit, or
Yeah.
you're off the, you're not playing, mate. You're going to risk injury. You're going to risk All these
Mm.
factors, you're gonna detriment yourself
Yeah,
first,
yeah.
because it's
Negatively
about
impact
to
the
it's
team.
about
Yeah,
to lift. We need to lift our level of, you know, standards. And again, I always use this. I use the concept of here's average,
mm,
and Kyokushin does not sit anywhere below that. Kyokushin
mm,
karateka or martial artists should sit. Average is no disrespect to anyone that doesn't do it.
mm.
That's just the line. So we
Yeah,
are here if you want to play like nicely. And then
yeah,
there are different world, tournament champions and fighters and the professional. Where do you think they're going to be if
yeah,
we're here as average day-to-day
yeah,
students that just love going to the dojo 2-3 times a week? Where do you think the pros are? They're about here.
yeah.
So if I finished the year last year, I said, even to my kids and teens, if we finish the year above average, which we should have, we finish a grading and
Mm,
we've
mm.
worked our asses off, we're here. Are you telling me you're going to come back to me to start the year when at average? No,
No.
no, no, no. You're going to have to maintain it and some.
Yeah, well, you're
I think,
always creating a new average, I think, aren't you? Like it's, that what came out of COVID, new norms, new normals,
how
right?
how does the
You
Japanese
create a
how
new
how
normal
do the
because
Japanese language this in a way? How have they, or the teachers, the shians or
yeah,
dojo
well, I
operators?
mean, I think it's very similar. They probably don't verbalize it as much as we do.
Yeah.
Very sort of high context culture where a lot of the unspoken stuff what's not said is more important than what is said.
Uh-huh.
You sort of have to read between the lines, and that's just Japanese
Yeah.
communication. It can be frustrating, but it's the power of less
Mm,
in the verbal.
got you.
And I guess for Japan, yeah, this time of the year, okay, season's the opposite. They have something called Kagami Biraki, so that's the first training of the year.
Right.
It's starting basically now.
Yep.
Anywhere, the earlier places will start on the 11th of January, thereabouts.
Yep.
Start back, and it it sort of connects to what you're saying. There's a lot of reflection on the year gone past.
Yes.
You do your training, you do a basic training session, you run through everything just to dust off the cobwebs, so
Mm-hmm.
to speak.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
The
Exactly.
instructors are expected to see that, what you just alluded to is where people have sort of where they sit with their newly created average, or base. Let's call it a base. You're always building on that base,
Correct.
right? And like you referred to with professionals, I mean, that's the world of high performance. But I guess you can individualize that and have your own sort of high performance mindset. And you're always wanting to perform better than you have before. And that's part of that self reflection, right? So at the beginning of the year, yeah, in the training session, a lot of people will sort of join, and the instructor's responsibility here is to A, get them back sweating on the floor,
Mm,
but B, sort of encourage them to set new goals. So they'll explain the calendar, and it's very much what you're talking about, the
mm-hmm.
pre-seasons now, as we move towards spring. And that's when a lot of the tournaments will start again.
Right.
So, the instructor will talk about, okay, what are the goals for the year?
Yep.
This is the calendar. This is what we've got to look forward to. They'll encourage people to give it a go that haven't before.
Yeah.
They will then start a plan for those veteran or regular
Yeah.
fighters in their dojo. So there's a lot going on. It's a lot of micromanagement at the beginning,
Yeah.
but there's clear goal setting in it. We call it a New Year's resolution. Um, you know, they call it hofu in Japanese here. It's the same thing, but I think the underlining meaning of it is goal setting for the year
Gotcha.
and achievable goals, realistic goals is always what they talk about.
Yeah.
Don't It's okay to dream big, but keep your goals realistic.
Mm,
And so, that's sort of instilled in the first month or so
got
as
it.
people. So you'll talk to different people and say, okay. And with gradings, for example, then, usually, that part of the schedule is, okay, when are the tournaments on? When are the camps going to be? And when are the gradings going to be? And they might have, depending on the faction, depending on the dojo as well, they usually will keep the Q grades and the done grades separate. There's usually two done gradings a year, one in the spring and one late fall, purely because of numbers, So there's
Yeah.
one usually around March, April, and then maybe one in October, November. And that's different to, if they have an international tournament, they might have an international grading. It's separate to that.
Well,
So,
here's the segue for me in sharing with
mhm,
the listeners. So perfect way in explaining the calendar.
mm,
We have a different calendar this year. So this year for our club, our dojo, our group, Zen Kyokushin, we have a trip to Japan, which will be
mm.
fantastic. We'll
Yep,
catch up, and to listeners,
yeah, sure
we're
will.
sure Shihan, Sean, and I will do something over there when we get to catch up. Is in April, mid to late April. So we're on a 12-week agenda, as I call it. We're up to week 10 after last night's session. We got 10 to go, 10 by 70 odd days, nearly 80 days, 70 odd days. And there's a couple of hats I've got to wear. So
Mhm,
one of them is I've got my dojo, and we've got a nice contingent of fighters. Now the fighters are two in open, so they're young bucks, and
mhm,
they're ready to go and peaking, and we're working slowly and building them up. Then there's three veterans. I'll put myself in the veterans, 40 to 47, and got the tick from Shian and Kyoshi going, let's go, give it a shot. Now while I'm training my students, I'm like, well, I'm training them anyway. I'm getting bashed, I mean, physical and
conditioned.
sparring with them
Yeah.
as anyway. So yeah, let's keep going. And I'm fortunate I keep myself active and fit every day. So
Mm,
there's that. And then I've got two others in the over 47, 48 division. So the hat of uh coach is there, the hat of me fighting is there. And then there's another thing that's going to happen at the end of that tournament, which is the grading. So
mhm.
all of these things are happening within a 2-day period, not a separate interval.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah, yeah.
tough ask. Don't get me wrong. Am I? People are like, "What? What are you crazy?" Like my wife's like, "Are you for real?"
Mm,
But there's a difference between us. I call it the Kyokushin mentality is not the same mentality as anyone else,
mm,
and especially with some of us that have done it 15 years plus, let
mm,
alone 20, let alone 25, 30 years plus. It's just a
mm.
different mindset, different.
Yeah,
I kind of say it, you're not meant to be in the same conversation as me when it comes to martial arts in
yeah, yeah,
regards
yeah.
to understanding a personal friend or a neighbor goes, what are you
You're mad.
thinking?
Yeah,
Are you
yeah, yeah,
mad?
yeah. I've had that
And to
before.
me, it's the ultimate goal. That goal, it's set, it's ready, we're on.
Mm,
Students get their goals, I get their goals, dojo gets the goals because the
mm,
guys that benefit off it, I said, once one of us are on the mat, we're all on the mat, whether
mhm.
it's for fighting and grading. So get your asses back in get back and can be consistent with
Yeah,
us in readiness to prepare for the April Japan side of things. And then that instills another element of standards, levels, goals. And it's this year we haven't been to Japan for obvious reasons. And before you know it, it's nearly 6 to 8 years for most of us because we were
right.
waiting to go in 2019, 2020. That fell through. It's goddamn
Yeah,
2024 tomorrow,
yeah.
today.
No, I know. Where'd the time go? Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so, none of us, yeah, as they say, are getting younger,
Mm,
and it's just blitz through, which then again turbocharges
yeah,
our calendar for our dojo. And for those that are listening, um, I hope that's getting a grasp of the intensity and the level and the expectation of different dojos. Different dojos will
yep.
be splitting it up. You know,
Different
mid
focuses, different.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I was chatting with Shian Judd Reed the other day, and I was
Mm,
down in Anglesey, which is 30 minutes down the road, and Shian Judd has his mid-year camp there in mid to late May. Mid to late May is carnage for me.
mm.
Wedding anniversary, family holiday, Mother's Day, wife's birthday.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not a good time.
Happy wife, happy life, as they
Right.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm very lucky with that. But in May, I go to Shiana. Right. And my point was a mid-year camp in Australia or down south in
Right,
Victoria in late May, you fringe winter. And we do
right.
the and Shian Judd's standard. Let's go in the water. Let's wake
Yeah.
up at 6. 2.5K run down to the beach, straight in the,
Yeah.
and that mid-year camp gives that revitalize. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
revitalizes guys like me because it's like we're part of we're part as in we're all right, here we go. This is that
Yep.
mid-year
Yep.
circuit break, I call it,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and then my masters, Kyoshi and Xian Billy and Xian Lance, we do the late October, uh,
Right.
close to summer, spring camp, which has
Mhm.
its their upside of their training with Xian Bobby Low,
Right.
their years of experience with other weapons and kata.
Mm.
And then so it's got we had a nice balance. I had a nice balance there of camps. We had a
Yeah.
nice balance. So yeah, the preseason slash calendar angle, it's still bumper to bumper. Well, it's still meaning it is bumper to
Yeah. Well, I
bumper.
mean, the year goes so fast now because I think, and I mean, as an instructor, you sort of the different ranks that you achieve, they're not, it's not for decoration. Someone above you has decided that you are, worthy of that grade. With it comes a new set of responsibilities. But I think you represent your dojo, so you lead by example, right? And I think what you were talking about just now, the way I think it corresponds really well or fits in well with what's happening in Japan
Mm.
is that there's a lot of leading by example. And so, like you're saying, you're training your fighters,
Yeah,
you're also training yourself.
yeah,
And those that aren't participating in that way at this time are still coming to the dojo and seeing all of this going on.
yep.
And you're not just staying at the front barking out commands. You're in the thick and thin and
Yep.
thick of, and you're sort of show. There's more actions than words, and I think that's a really important thing that is still pretty strong here in Japan. I mean, that like I just said before, there's not a lot of verbal explanation. It's sort of like the instructors are expected to stand up there and demonstrate and show and sweat as much as everyone else.
So tell
So
me
I mean,
this. So tell me
yeah,
this. You're going to need to help me on this. Sorry to cut you off there,
yeah,
but we we are heading over there to grade.
hmm
I'm fortunate to go fourth. There's a couple of them going for third. It's going to be,
yep,
and again, we're on the proviso that it's the day after the tournament and
yep,
everyone's fit and healthy and strong and numbers work out. Now,
yep,
we still got to go in there. So your experience in some of the gradings and seeing many over
mm,
there, there
yep,
is the and I can't wait to share more. But you know, we've been very lucky to see Kyoshi Jimmy Phillips get his seventh
yep,
dan under our group. And then we have a new Hunchi here in Australia, Hunchi Gary Vickers from the
yep,
Matsushima group, who
hmm
graded, who officially
yep,
graded, and got his eighth dan in Chile just before Christmas. Hopefully we get them on to talk about, their age and their unbelievable work in getting there.
mm,
But for
mm.
someone like us that is sneaking our way there in
Yeah,
10
yeah,
weeks time, I'd rather chat to you now about giving me a
yeah,
couple of pointers, giving us a couple of pointers than you going, oh yeah, shit. Oh, how'd you go at the end of the grading? Oh fuck, now
yeah,
you
yeah,
tell me.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I'm saying?
So gradings here in Japan are pretty stock standard across all factions. I guess what's different is that maybe, and I'm not aware of what your Udansha gradings are like at this point in time in Australia. But if I use New Zealand as a point of reference, we have a very sort of solid, defined syllabus for
Hmm.
each of the down grades. And we have a grading syllabus,
Yeah,
it's a booklet
I got you.
and it's got everything, the order of what the different sections, there's 7 or 8 different sections to
Yep,
each Dansha grading.
yep,
Um, so it's all laid out. And again, it's very much verbalized
yep,
or it's in text. So you've
yep.
got a very clear guideline. Here, because the format doesn't really change amongst the Udansha gradings, and I'll make this a bit clearer in a moment, you sort of don't need it written down on the sheet because you know what's going to go on. So it starts off with Kihon, and depending on how the grading panel feel on the day, that could be 30 techniques of everything. It could be 50. They might throw in 100 here, 100 there, but you just don't know.
Right.
So as long as you're continuously training and training at 100% regularly and doing everything in your Kihon as you should be, then it's nothing new.
Yep.
It's grading day.
No
So
shock to the system there.
nerves come in, adrenaline starts pumping, but you're there to show the best polished version of yourself.
Got it.
But everything goes back to Kihon, and I mean,
Mhm.
I used to talk about this all the time, Kihon is the base, and people want to be good fighters, yeah, but if you and Yui Shihan talks about this all the time, it's like a car engine, you know, you've got to take care of the small parts in there to run the big motor. And if
Gotcha.
those small parts are your Kihon and the big motor and running is you in a tournament or in a grading, if you haven't tightened all the nuts and bolts and oiled everything and what have you, then it's not going to perform at its best. So that's the mentality. So you do your Kihon, again, depending on the faction, you might have your Yakusoku Kumite, you might have your different sort of combinations. Some do that, some don't. Zen Kyokushin from the gradings I've seen, that they will do Kihon, then they will do some Idogeko, and I think Kyoshi Jimmy talked about this before. You'll do your kata, you'll do your strength and stamina, then you'll do your fighting, and I mean, that's pretty stock standard
Yep.
amongst all of them.
Yep.
Um, so, you don't really, you may have to, have a few more kata in your repertoire,
Mm.
depending on the grade you're going for. But the whole flow of the day doesn't really change amongst the different done gradings, whereas in New Zealand, the difference between Shodan and Nidan is night and day.
Okay.
Because Nidan, there's a whole lot of new techniques that you have to do.
Yep.
Sandan um, again, you're asked to do different things, and I mean, it'll take
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
hour or two
Not a
to
time.
explain it all. But there's new challenges
Yeah.
with
Good.
each done
Yeah.
grade,
Yeah.
as well as the normal Kihon stuff, but there's new challenges. So you're expected to grow.
Yeah.
So it's the way you look at growth and improvement. And I think in Japan, it always goes back to, well, how have you polished your Kihon
Mm-hmm.
as a Kyokushin karateka? Now's your chance to show us a better version of yourself than the last time. And that's the pressure that's put on you. And then, I mean, the biggest differences, I guess, are the number of fights. For Shodan here, it's 10, and for in New Zealand and I guess a lot of Australia, it's, the traditional 40 that
Yep.
everyone loves to do. Then Nidan is 20, 30, 40, and for some factions it stops at Godan. But what's happening recently is a lot of the factions are saying, well, if you want to push yourself, I mean, I know Saw Kyokushin does it. I know that recently Nitsu Shihan, when he did his Rokudan, he did 60
Mm.
under Hasegawa. Um, there's a few different places that are putting that out and saying, well, if you want to do the kumite and you're, able to, then you have this option as well. So, that's I guess a new addition, but it's not stock standard by any means. Another change I would say that's happened is that they're more aware of perhaps, or they like to term it as everyone's got a full-time job after the grading. So it's not all bare knuckle stuff
Mm.
now. You see a lot more gradings where you're able to wear gloves.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I know the Matsui faction does that.
Okay.
You know that, Zen Kyokushin does it. Soul Kyokushin did it. Um, Shin Kyokushin doesn't. You don't wear any gloves. I haven't seen any Shin Kyokushin gradings where they're wearing gloves. So again, that's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're not holding the pieces of wood anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
the gradings I've done, the Yudansha gradings I've done here, I think the first, so well, Nidan and Sandan, I had to have a small piece of wood in my hand. And the reason behind that was to make sure you kept your fist close.
Mm.
And once you drop that, then that was a wazari against you, because they score it differently here.
Gotcha.
If you land a shot, there's a wazari, or if you make it through the fight after a minute and a half, then it's hikiwake, or if you're absolutely pummeled, then it's a loss.
Loss.
You know, if you've knocked
Gotcha.
someone else, that's an ippon, or
Yep.
you've hit them hard enough that you stop them in their tracks. They
Yep.
may not be physically knocked
Yeah.
out, but they can't really. It's too dangerous for them to continue. Then then you'll see the markings they put on the blackboard. They'll circle them or triangle or a cross to
Gotcha.
signify whether it's ippon,
Happened.
wazari, or a loss. And that's taken into consideration when they decide whether you're passed or not. Again, I guess for normal gradings here, you do the grading, but you don't know if you passed or not on the day. So they will then take all their notes back. The grading panel will then take all their notes back. They will publish the results in anywhere between 2 weeks to a month after that. So you don't know. Whereas in, I guess, Australia and New Zealand, if you can make it through the grading, and it's not a total shambles and you're
Yeah.
not stuck in your tracks
Yeah.
halfway through,
Yeah.
you usually pass.
Yeah.
And again, that's the big difference there.
Yeah.
So, however, with international gradings,
Yeah.
because people have come a long way, the majority of the factions,
Right.
as long as you're still standing at the end of it, and not just saying you're still standing, but
Yeah.
you've done good grading,
Yeah.
then 9 times out of 10, they will usually award the grade then
Yeah.
and there.
Well, whilst there.
So that's the difference. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. That great summary. Perfect. Good. There you have it. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is what I was reiterating at the theme of this, that preseason, that year of goals and year ahead. And
Mm.
for those obviously listening, I think again, it's not again. I'm taking a fair bit away with the less talking and more action. I love that,
Mm.
but I do
Mm.
love talking too. But I'm not one that talks a lot in the dojo. We got to get it done. But in talking in this
Mm.
format, I love
Yeah.
sharing and everyone getting a grasp of it. And what I'm alluding to is, I don't think we talk enough about
Mm.
this marathon, the
Mm.
marathon of a grading that goes for potentially anywhere between 4 to 6 hours, depending on what's going on,
Mm.
right?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And that marathon reminds me to reinforce more to all of us in the Kyokushin and karate, training,
Yeah.
that again, you have the pillar of a full contact fighter, 2 to 3 minutes of that absolute, bash and crash, and then determining your body going through rounds up to, another 4, 5, 6, 7 fights to win a title, which
Mm.
is a different type of preseason slash endurance, you know, build. But
Mm.
this endurance of 4 to 6 hours, I reinforced heavily in my dojo that you cannot underestimate it. You cannot
Mm.
just mentally, physically, spiritually, once a year, because it's within that senior grading that I do at my dojo. It's always at the end of the year. Doesn't matter. It's at the end of the year. We lock it in from anywhere from green and above. You
Mm.
have one grading a year, because
Right.
it's a bit tougher with us. Tougher
Yeah.
meaning you got it, because I kind of feel I don't want to
It's not
put
a
pressure.
race, is it? Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah. It's not a race.
No,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but don't think you're just going to get fit for it in the last
Yeah. Yeah.
10
Yeah.
weeks of the year.
Yeah.
Or be, yeah, I know I'll be right. No, mate. I called the 100-man kumite is a marathon, is 4 hours, roughly, of being punched and kicked. The 50-man was a half a marathon, 2 and a bit hours of getting punched and kicked. So
Yeah.
envisage running and someone punching and
Yeah.
kicking you while you run or
Yeah. Yeah.
jog,
Yeah. Yeah.
in a sarcastic way.
Mm.
And then the grading is 4 to 6 hours. 6 hours. Let's
Mm.
go for 5 to 6. I don't know, for argument's sake. So how are you going to? How are you? Kyokushin has to test it in that manner, and we're all I graded for 6 hours. Shit, awesome, well done. And what I'm trying to get at is for everyone to think of what they're doing now to be ready for these long, because out of all in my dojo, 20 adults, right? Two to three are full contact fighters, 10%.
Mm.
The rest, a lot older business
Yeah.
operators,
Different
lawyers, accountants,
objectives, different reasons. Yeah.
right? And I love to encourage them in their mid to late 30s. Most of my dojo is stay
Right.
fit, stay healthy, be
Mm.
90% ready, get your endurance up.
Mm.
Training traditionally went for 2 hours, under Shihan Billy, and then we still haven't put a finger on here in Australia, or slash, again, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm
Yeah.
at fault as well. How it reduced to an hour and a half for some sessions, and now some sessions
Yeah.
reduced to an hour. And that stamina and endurance doesn't get as built as it used to be when it was a 2 hour grading. And then those 2 hour class, and those 2 hour classes, everyone was like, yeah, but the last half an hour, or a big chunk of that is kata in that block. Hey man, your grading is going to be a half an hour, 45 minutes of kata as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
that's one thing, I guess, here, when I was training under Hasegawa, it was, and he used to say that don't look at kata or the other parts as a chance to take your foot off the gas.
right,
You should be going at
good
100%
point.
from the word go. And he said, if you gas out three-quarters of the way through
Right.
a training session,
Yep.
okay, but you've gone 100% until that stage, he says, then I know you're training your guts out. He
Right.
says, if I see people sort of coasting, then there's going to be problems,
Yeah.
that you're saving yourself
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
end, and that comes back to, so don't pace yourself,
Yep.
push yourself. And then each time you go into a training, you're going to go 10 meters further
Right.
or 10 minutes further at
Yeah.
the same intensity. And that just naturally builds up. So that's where you link the physical with the mental. And I mean, that's all part of the philosophy. And I guess that's
Correct.
something we all own.
Yeah.
But and as you do your Udansha gradings, then you've been asked to grade or been allowed to grade because your instructor feels that, you know, at that new grade, you would serve the dojo and your students at a different level.
Gotcha.
And it's not an entitlement. It's not a I mean, it is a privilege to be asked to do a grading, but the grade you have isn't a privilege. It's a responsibility. It's something that,
Right.
you've been asked to step up to the next level because you're acting as an example for others, and I guess with the gradings, the difference there in Japan is you know what you're in, what lies ahead. So you've just got to show the best polished version because it's usually the same format. Going back to my New Zealand example, and I think my Shihan back in New Zealand, Shihan Graham,
Nice.
put it best recently, that, as the Shodan grading is honestly, one of the toughest gradings you ever do. And he said, that we know you're worthy of that grade, and that's why you're allowed, or we think you're worthy of that grade, and we'll be able to successfully navigate the grading. But it's our responsibility to strip everything back, everything off you. The
Mm.
physicality, the
Hmm.
fitness, everything. And at the end of the day, see what metal you have left,
Right.
and
Nice.
and the
Nice.
spirit. And,
Yeah.
and that goes back to this Usuno Seishin. So
Nice.
a grading like that, or the 50 man, it's the same thing. It may not be pretty at the end of it,
Right.
but if you're still standing and you're still punching and kicking
Yeah.
and picking yourself up off the ground,
Right.
that's what you're showing is as that part of it as well. So it's
Getting some
it's
goosebumps.
blending that physical with the mental as well. Whereas in Japan, I mean, when you come to the kumite and the grading, it's full on. I
Hmm.
mean, that you can't, and again, you can't pace yourself. And if you're getting smacked about, they'll pull you off the floor. Your grading's done. So it's not as intense as a tournament, but
Yeah.
you're not expected to pull your punches.
Yeah.
You're not going there to knock each other
Yeah.
out, but going there to push each other. And
Yeah.
and the grading panel will be looking at that.
Yeah.
And if you're pacing yourself or just gliding through,
Yeah.
then you're pulled off the floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there again, it's that blend of that mentality as well, which, different formats perhaps, but
Yeah.
at the essence of it is still the same. And
Yeah.
so if you're building up towards a grading, I think one of the commonalities there is the attitude you go in to each training with. And that's something that I think is pretty much the stock standard, the same between
And
Japan and the
and
West.
And that's really cool. And a reminder to all, and I said it last night. I mean, I teach kids and teens on a Tuesday down here on the Surf Coast, and I call them the Rat Packs. You know, there's some really fun, strong kids I'm grooming
Mm,
here, and I love it. And then last night I'm at my main school in Melbourne, and I said to them, and it just comes out instinctively, right? I go, I don't just grade you, as I said, my senpais behind me that helped me with the kids and teens program, we're not just going to wait to grade you. I'm grading you now. I grade you
mm.
every time I see you. I go, man, what?
Yep. Yep.
And then
That's
I
it.
go, I've got my eyes and ears times four of my senpai, kohai that are behind
Yeah.
me, and they're watching and listening. And it's just that instillment that I want and that I'm wording to everyone else.
Yeah.
Don't like it helps you, I feel. And I'm not trying to pressure 11, 12, 13-year-old kids. I'm giving them that I guess tip, that what you were saying then, don't try and bullshit me. Don't try and bullshit a bullshit artist, right? Don't try and
Yeah.
wing it here. That's not
Yeah.
what we're here to do. And not that
No.
they're intentionally doing it. Our job is to make them go, oh shit, I'm capable of,
Yeah. Yeah.
should I just win at
There's
this
an
rate?
expectation there, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I love instilling that. That's why I love teaching. I love going, I don't want, and I tell them it's not about the dojo, it's at school. When you're at
Yep.
school, you and us as Kyokushin Karateka at work, we cannot. We come to the dojo to get these tips, to get this guidance, to get this experience
Mm,
from seniors and mentors that have been through it, that go, don't don't prepare your year half-assed.
mm.
Don't start thinking maybe there's a saying, don't expect anything, do something, right?
Yeah.
Don't expect how are you going to try and cruise through something through a class as a senior, as an adult, in front of, and I say in front of me. And then
Yeah.
I go, how would you be training? And then I look behind me and I go, if Shihan Billy was here, how
Yeah.
would you be training if Hanchi Eddie Emin was here?
Mm, mm,
And
mm,
then the biggest one of all, don't don't tell me if the boss, if Sosai, and obviously his
mm,
picture's up on the wall, and I point behind me and I go, what do you think that picture's there for?
mm,
For
mm.
us to just look at? It is his spirit that's in here. That
Yeah.
imagine the way you would train if he was here.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
And then, and then
Yeah.
everyone just comes
Actually,
off the
that's a
ball.
really good point. I mean, it reminds me of, I mean, we're blessed in New Zealand with some great Shihans, and we've got a Hanshi Doug as well.
Yeah.
And one of the Shihans, Alex, in the North Island in Wellington, at a camp, was talking about personalizing the dojo kun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it starts off, we will train
Yep.
our minds and bodies for a firm, unshaken spirit, right?
Yep.
And it says we. He goes, that's good to build a sense of community in the dojo,
Yes.
and that's why we do it at the end of training to remind ourselves we are all heading towards
Yep.
the same goals,
Yeah.
right? That are in the dojo kun or guidelines or whatever you want to call them, right?
Yeah.
He says, but why don't you just take the we out and put I in there
Beam.
before you start a training?
Yeah.
Well, when you
I
do
like
that
it.
self-reflection, I will, and you can reword it. You don't have to
Mm.
recite the dojo kun,
Gotcha.
word for word. You can say, I will put everything into this training I'm about to begin.
Cool.
And I think that's what you're talking about with the kids as well. And I think Philip,
Yeah. Yeah.
when he was
Senpai.
on, he,
Yeah.
he was saying, he had to recreate the dojo kun into kids' language.
Yeah.
Okay, well then maybe we can take the meaning of the dojo kun, but put it into a few personal objectives. And for the Q grades, it's great because they're watching, and I've always said this to any Q grade, I don't want you looking at me or the front line. I want you looking at the next grade and use them as your
Measuring
point of
stick.
reference. And that's what you're aiming to be. You want to be like that blue belt. You want to be like that yellow belt.
Gotcha.
You want to kick like that green belt, if you're a yellow belt, or you want to do this or that, you want to be able to do, if you're a green belt, what the brown belts are doing. Look at something achievable.
Gotcha.
But what's lost, and I see this in Japan as well, is once you get to Yudansha level, especially in Japan, I would say this is one critique I would have of Japan, is that you're then left to kind of figure it out for yourself, which is fine. That's a responsibility of being a black belt.
Hmm.
Um, However, as I've sort of contemplated and self-reflected, I think what Japan would benefit from is a bit more personalized objectives
Hmm.
for you Dutch as well. Like, excuse me, what is expected of a Sundap? What is expected of a Yondan?
Hmm.
Define that grade a little bit more in terms of,
Gotcha.
okay, what's your next goal?
Yeah.
What kind of value do you want to put on that new stripe you've got on there? Okay,
Yeah.
so what do you want to work on next?
Right.
What is your next objective?
Yes.
That's something I try to and it's a tough question to answer,
Mm.
but maybe it makes people think. It provokes some thought on, okay, well, yeah, I've like for yourself, when you go in April and you grade and you do your Yondan, and I'm sure you'll do a great job. Okay, yeah, you've done it. Great, well done. Okay, now the next step for you is what kind of Yondan do you want to be?
Yes.
In terms of, okay, well, what are your new set of goals
Mm.
as a Yondan?
Mm.
What's the next step for Pat? Okay,
Right.
what's the next step? It's not just sort of going, well, yeah, that's
Sweet.
right.
Mm.
Okay, like so Rokudan now for me,
Yeah.
it's a new thing. I'm still
Yeah.
getting my head around it,
Yeah.
but I'm sitting and I'm saying, okay, what else do I want to add to my toolbox
Gotcha.
that would add value to this grade?
Add value.
Right? And so it's a bit of a self-definition, and yeah, maybe we verbalize it too much, but now and again you got to sit down and sort of, even if you just have a conversation with yourself, you can't just say, "Oh, now I'm a Shihan," or "Now I'm a Sensei." Yeah, who gives a shit?
Right.
You know,
Right.
because if you're a dreadful one, then you're projecting a bad example to all those down the line. So
Absolutely.
you've got to constantly be, like you say, you expect that of your students to be ready. I think we need to be ready as well, because
That.
people are always looking at us. And so if we're not keeping that bar high,
Yeah.
and to do that, we need to constantly be setting new
I,
objectives for ourselves. So
I say I have a big saying, and my dojo will cringe. I say you got to be a product of the product. You got to be a product of the product. And the last one is the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah,
You're walking around with a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The product of the
yes,
product, lead by example, being there, etc., etc. All the stuff we all know from our seniors, right?
yeah,
And yeah, but the product of the product is it's right in front of your face with Kyokushin karate. We all kind of know. So,
yeah,
man, Chian, it was a good chat. Hey, let's share something here. So I was sharing with Shian, everyone, earlier, that again, there's a bit of a tap on the shoulder that's happening. And I call it that honestly. I don't try
it's
to
a
seek
calling.
things.
It's
Yeah, I don't,
something.
the
It's a
and
voice.
the
Yeah.
tap on the shoulders come back for the forever the student.
Mhm.
That was such a success and built the Kyokushin shuffle to begin with, and it was such a awesome thing that again came from the tap of the shoulder. And a conversation with my wife was when she goes, "Well, you're kind of like forever the student, Pat. You just don't stop." And I went, "Bang! That's the name. That's it. That's the name." And it was from that. And then I went right, and I was just telling Sean, everyone that I feel the need to bring that back. I'd love to bring it back now. In putting it out to the universe now, and with Shihan Sean and with his time and my time, and we still continue the Japan Chronicles. It's integral. It's been fantastic, and we get the insights of what's happening and Shihan on the ground there. But there is continuous. I call it flowers that need to be given to many, many people that has not been given. And to name a couple, and then you've got a couple, which I want you to name. So for one is Kyoshi Jimmy Phillips, who got his 7th dan in Japan, is a milestone. And Hanchi Gary Vickers from the Matsushima group got his 8th
Mm,
dan. Now,
mm,
these are two people that were integral under the guidance of Hanchi John Taylor, who, rest in
mm,
peace, passed away. So I would love to get, and I tried to give it time for the listeners under the AKKA group, um, to give it some time of the passing of Hanchi, and then to get two of his students who are now our leaders here in Australia. So there's a conversation I'd love to have, and get you involved with that as well. But this is under the Forever the Student banner. And then you gestured, who are you? You've got a handful as
Yeah,
well,
well,
but
I mean,
one of
first
your
of
key
it,
ones.
yeah, linking back home, the person that's been probably the biggest influence on my Kyokushin journey still continues to be to this day, and
Yeah,
very humble person who hates the limelight. So it might be difficult to get him on, but I'll twist his arm because I'll be
yeah,
seeing him soon. Is my instructor Shihan Graham Gavigan,
of course.
who's the branch
Right.
chief of South Island and part of the executive committee for Mock NZ. You've interviewed Hunchy Doug, you've
Yep.
interviewed Shihan Mike.
Yep.
I'd love to get Shihan Graham on there,
Yep.
and plus, some others that are
Yep.
very humble in New Zealand. I mentioned Shihan Alex before.
Yep.
This is a person that originally started when Kyokushin started in New Zealand. Okay, so
Wow.
he goes a long way and
Got to get him on.
still very active.
Right.
And he's been involved in a lot of other different things, including coaching
Gotcha.
teams in different sports, etc.
So
So those two, the
yeah,
big names, but also some others that, it doesn't matter what the grade is. Everyone has a story, everyone
correct.
has a journey. And so, I can think about 4 or 5 people off the top of my head that are in New
Good.
Zealand.
Good.
Also, even in Japan, whether we put that into the Japan Chronicles
Yeah.
or Forever the Student, we'll see where it lies once we do
Now,
an interview. But I've got another 2 or 3 here that aren't Japanese
yeah.
because we want to interview some Japanese
Yeah.
instructors again this year,
Correct.
and we've got some feelers out for that, so that'll be happening
So what
soon.
we
But
what
yeah, so some there as well.
what we want to do, you're listening. Again, we average 500, 700 listeners, whatever, that pop up. Tell us if you want us for Forever the Student to come back to highlight / give the flowers to certain people within the Kyokushin community here in Australia. New Zealand is our major listeners. But
Mm.
anyway,
Yeah,
please put it in the comments here. Don't be afraid to nominate someone as well. It just gives us a bit of an angle. Don't put too much pressure on us. We still have lots to do. And my gesture to Shian early before we jumped on was, of course, I'd love to do this. I'd love to do this as a full-time thing. I'd love to just be interviewing and talking to anyone and everyone. If anyone said to me, and
we
I've shared
wouldn't.
it
Yeah,
before, if anyone said to me, what would you do? I just want to learn. I want to talk to knowledgeable people, young people, old people, but more so in the martial arts and then more so in the Kyokushin karate world. Approaching 25 years next year for me. I know Xian Billy's going for his 50th year next year. So there's all these milestones that I'm across. And then we kind of go, oh, that's great, and then get on with it. But then there are other organizations, other styles or groups in all facets of life that celebrate this.
yeah,
And my theme to this was also to give back with positive energy, because it's contagious and we need it back in
yeah,
Kyokushin. And then there's lots of people that are messaging me that do that. Are you going to do anything more? Can we get you back on? When are you doing something with Xian Sean?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I've used the last year as we've got lots on. We'll get back to you.
yeah,
We'll do our best. I'm going to do my best. Do I do one a week? I don't know. I'm going to see how I go. I'm going to see how people go. Start putting some nominations in the comments. Give Shian Sean some ideas as well. Give me some ideas. There would be lots of listeners out there. Don't be shy to nominate. Don't be that person
yeah,
that goes, oh, and don't come up to me when you see me and say, oh, you should have had blah, blah, blah on. Put it down. Let me know. I don't know it.
yeah,
We don't know everyone. We don't know what they're accomplishing, where they're at. We don't know if they've had some hardship and we can support them. Um, all these factors,
yeah,
let us know. Please put it down. Share this. Share that we might be doing this for 2024. Forever the Student might be with just me on some occasions, and then there will be Shian Sean as a guest. I think the balance works perfectly
yeah.
with everyone now seeing what Shian and I do for the Japan Chronicles. So, Shian, thanks for your time again. Let's see what we get
Thanks,
out of the
Sensei.
comments. Lovely
Yep,
chat as always.
yep,
Again, chats like this get me going. I feel like
yeah,
going to
exactly.
surf now but I've got work to do. Um,
Yeah, we
any
got to pay
last
the
takes for
bills.
you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Us, thanks, Sensei. Well done.
Good on you. Thanks,
Us.
everyone. All that jazz. I don't even tell everyone to subscribe, but if you get the chance, subscribe and all
Yeah,
that stuff. We're here for you guys. We're here
subscribe,
for you guys.
leave a comment, and any feedback is great feedback for us. So look forward to hearing from everyone.
And on the theme of everyone, get your shit together, get your goals in organized, get your preseason going. Look forward to hearing what you might have been doing over the preseason as well. Leave some comments, all the above. Thanks, everyone. A big us to you all. Us.
Us.
Us.